If you had a chance to go back to the past, what would you do? For Rudd Donatos, it would be to slaughter all the dragons. Because in the future, where dragons have incinerated the entire world, Rudd lost everything, his comrades, his friends, and worst of all, his own brother, Aesir Donatos. He too fell in the final battle against the Dragon King. In a moment between life and death, as his final sword strike tore apart an unidentified dragon, something strange happened. Rudd was reborn into the past. But ironically, he was no longer himself. He had become Aesir, the genius older brother who had never known failure, the one who always carried the world on his shoulders. And now Rudd himself must live under that shadow, becoming Aesir and preventing the tragic apocalypse that once occurred. There's no room for hesitation, no more miracles, only blood, sweat, and preparation for an inevitable battle. A rematch with the Dragon King, the one who killed them all. Opening his eyes once more, a luxurious school with a series of magnificent buildings appeared under a clear blue sky. Rudd stood frozen in place, staring at the scene before him. What in the world is this? And just like that, I've returned to the past. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Everyone must remember this. You are Dragon Slayers, killers of dragons. Everyone listened intently to the announcement. The person on the podium continued eloquently. As the meaning of this name implies, you must annihilate the dragon race, stopping the monsters that are trampling on innocent lives. That is your calling and your duty, whether it's for duty or just for sport. Always remember the importance of the existence of dragon slayers. Welcome, new students. You have joined us and become students of the Agridium Dragon Slayer Academy. Returning to reality, that voice still echoed in Rudd's ears. As you all know, this academy has a 700-year history. He closed his eyes tightly and listened. A second later, Rudd slowly opened his eyes. The voice continued steadily. We provide the best education, the experience, and the knowledge to annihilate the dragon race. He stood frozen in astonishment, staring at the scene before him. Countless seniors have sacrificed themselves and their deaths. Rudd looked at the scene of everyone laughing and talking happily and couldn't believe his eyes. What the hell is this? He scanned his surroundings and thought, this horrifying scene, it's exactly like the entrance ceremony of Agridium. Rudd was so bewildered and terrified that his jaw dropped. He looked back and forth, wanting to confirm it one more time. What about the battle? The crowd? Or is this just a dream? But this feeling? Rudd's hand suddenly stiffened. Memories suddenly flooded his mind. Damn you dragons! Please don't kill me. Rudd, you really are. I hope you don't miss it. The person standing before him? A series of previous scenes flashed before his eyes. Rudd helplessly tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. This can't be happening. I must kill them. He raised his sword, his eyes filled with resentment. The white-haired man spoke, wondering to himself. It would be troublesome if all of them died. Should I wait a little longer? At this moment, Rudd couldn't hold back his tears. His eyes became vacant. Don't tell me I've returned to the past? No. No spell can turn back time. And even if there were, there's no way a dragon could use language that only a god could. If so was the thing I just killed really a dragon, Rudd clenched his hand into a fist. He gritted his teeth in anger. Don't mess with me. Whether that thing was the Dragon Lord or some freak, it's just a damn lizard that I have to destroy. Rudd was so furious that the veins on his face bulged. Rudd clutched the tie on his collar. If I do this right, this could be an opportunity. Whatever its plan is this time, I'll slaughter all those dragons. And I won't let a single person die. With that thought, he strode forward aggressively. Suddenly, a voice spoke up from behind Rudd, catching his attention. Hey, you there. He turned his head in surprise to look at the person. Henneth raised her hand, twirling it a few times, and looked at him with confusion. Are you sick or something? Rudd remembered her. Henneth. He remembered before he closed his eyes. Henneth, sobbing, had whispered, Survive, Rudd. Seeing Henneth standing right in front of him took Rudd by surprise. Henneth. Henneth, startled and confused, pointed to her own face. Huh? Rudd suddenly realized his words were strange. He looked towards Henneth, who was suspiciously eyeing him. What do you know me? Hearing this, Rudd became flustered. He thought to himself, "This is the first time we've met." Rudd covered his mouth with his hand. He glanced away, avoiding Henneth's gaze. "You're the valedictorian. Of course I recognize you." Hearing that, she didn't suspect anything. "Oh, right. That makes sense." Rudd's face darkened with anger. "Why did you ask if I was sick?" Henneth, unfazed, casually turned away. "A moment ago you were talking and cursing to yourself. So I was wondering if you have some kind of mental illness or something." Hearing the reason, he felt helpless. "What?" Henneth laughed heartily. "It's rare to see crazy people get into Agridium Academy. Everyone here is an elite, but this is the first time I've seen a crazy person." Rudd was completely helpless against her. He was annoyed but could only bow his head and give a faint smile. "She's as tactless as ever." Seeing him smile, Henneth was very curious. "Why are you smiling? Are you some kind of pervert who likes being scolded?" Rudd ignored her and turned to leave. "That's not it. Anyway, I'm sorry if I bothered you." Henneth didn't care anymore and let it go. "As long as you know." He said that out loud, but inside, Rudd was holding a grudge against her. "I'm letting this go only because you're still a kid, but you need to fix your attitude." A sudden announcement rang out. "The entrance ceremony will begin shortly. All new students, please take your seats. Therefore, to be accepted into this place and for all your ambitions and dreams at this academy." The announcement echoed throughout the school. After listening for a while, Henneth stretched her arms, tired. She leaned back and sighed in exasperation. What a terribly long speech. Henneth propped her hands on the table and looked at Rudd, who was also very bored. "I'm sick of it." He glanced at Henneth and thought to himself, "Should I be more open with her? She'll just bother me again if I ignore her anyway." After a moment of hesitation, Rudd finally opened his mouth and replied, "I know, right?" Seeing that he was willing to talk, Henneth became even more enthusiastic. "But I can still bear it because patience is a basic virtue of a mage." Rudd feigned praise. "Wow, that sounds great." Henneth eagerly turned to chat with him. "That's the foundation of the Hapuilia mage family. What's your name?" "Rudd. I come from a place called Jizol. It's in a remote part of the continent, so you've probably never heard of it." Rudd introduced himself nonchalantly with his arms crossed. Henneth bowed her head and replied, "This is the first time I've heard of your family and that territory. But you still got into Agridium even with that special background. You probably don't know about—" Before she could finish her sentence, she realized she had misspoken. Henneth covered her mouth and thought, "Oops. Why did I say it like that?" When she was a child, Henneth was taught by her mother, "Always remember, Henneth. You need to be careful when talking to those lowly fools. They're not even worthy of touching the toes of the Hapuilia family." She hugged the book to her chest and obediently replied, "Yes, mother." Henneth silently thanked her mother for her earlier teachings. "If it weren't for my mother's instilled words, I might have said something thoughtless about him. But he doesn't seem to mind at all." Henneth turned to see Rudd looking at her with a bored, confused expression. To break the awkward atmosphere, Henneth raised her hand and cleared her throat. "So I mean," as she spoke, she pointed to the stage in front, "if there's anything you don't understand, I'll teach you. For example, the people on the second floor are the leaders of famous guilds. They're always looking for the best talents in the academy to take notice of and possibly recruit into their guilds." Following Henneth's pointed finger, Rudd recognized them all. Blaze Moonshadow. "Even the head of Tri-V is here, huh?" His face turned cold and dark. "I know them well, the achievements they will attain in the future, and the reason they will all die." Henneth, oblivious to his strange expression, continued eloquently, "You'll be eligible to apply to a guild when you reach year 3. But I've already decided which guild to join. You know." Rudd interrupted her. "Blaze, the #1 guild." Henneth greatly admired them. "That's right, but not just for that reason. The leader of the Blaze Guild is my role model, the White Flame Queen Liana. Oh, Lady Liana, you are wonderful. A high-level fire mage who wields a pure white flame. After her death at the hands of the Dragon Lord, Henneth became the next leader of the Blaze Guild. In the end, Henneth also burned her own life away to avenge the senior she had always admired. Remembering the past, Rudd affirmed, "If it's you, you can definitely get into Blaze." Henneth beamed happily like a flower. "Thanks, but you're just stating the obvious." The announcement rang out again. "Next we invite the Academy's valedictorian Henneth to step up and recite the oath." Hearing her name, Henneth immediately stood up and walked towards the podium. "It's my turn." Rudd watched her retreating figure and thought, "Everything is happening just as I remember. If I remember correctly, after this part will be—" Rudd's hand resting on his thigh tightened slightly. "Big brother, the student council president of Agritium, Aesir, a peerless genius, an indomitable warrior, and my only relative. The one who died like a fool for this stupid little brother?" A voice spoke up, pulling him back to reality. "It's a pleasure to meet you new students. I am the student council president, Jeremy." Hearing this name, Rudd looked up, his eyes wide with shock. The person continued his speech. "Dragons have caused terrible destruction across the continent. Countless people have died, and massacres have led to entire nations being completely wiped out. You should all be proud of yourselves for getting into this academy after overcoming countless competitors. You can call this the greatest organization for training dragon slayers, the Dragon Slayer Academy?" Rudd looked up, his face unable to hide his bewilderment. What the hell is this? In the previous life, the person giving the speech should have been Asir. As the meaning of this name implies, you must annihilate the dragon race. But now, the person speaking is Jeremy. Whether it's for duty or just for sport, Rudd didn't understand what was happening. What in the world is going on? That voice continued. "But we must always remember the importance and existence of dragon slayers." He suddenly remembered the childhood days of the two brothers. Rudd held the broken wooden sword in his hand, his voice full of annoyance. "Don't do that anymore." Aesir raised his hand to ruffle his hair and laughed playfully. "You're really growing up so fast." Rudd thought, impossible. Big brother was definitely the student council president, and Jeremy was his best friend. Rudd couldn't believe what was happening before his eyes. He shot up from his seat to Henneth's surprise. "Now, I'm going to my assigned classroom." "Hey, where are you going?" Rudd stopped and called out to Jeremy in the distance. "Wait a minute." He ran up to him, agitated. "Why are you the student council president? Wasn't the original president my brother? Aesir not running for president? Could it be that he's on the student council?" Rudd's hand gripped Jeremy's arm tightly. Seeing Rudd's agitation, he removed his hand and looked at Rudd in confusion. Wait a minute. What have you been talking about?" "I'm very sorry, new student, but this is the first time I've ever heard the name Aesir." Rudd was stunned, unable to believe this was real. After saying that, Jeremy turned and left, leaving Rudd full of questions. "He doesn't know about my big brother. So where is my big brother?" At the same time, a bad hypothesis flashed through my mind. Aesir doesn't exist in this world. The horrifying hypothesis that my brother, the strongest warrior, does not exist in this world. The sound of the Academy's bells echoed in the air, pieces of confetti flying in the gentle breeze. The announcer's voice came from the Academy's speakers. "And with that, today's entrance ceremony has come to an end. Now will all new students please return to their assigned classrooms." At this moment, Rudd was still lost in his own world. "No, that's such a ridiculous assertion. My brother Aesir doesn't exist in this world. But what if... He looked towards the hallway, which was filled with the laughter of students passing by. "If that's true, maybe Aesir's existence has completely vanished, or he also returned and decided not to come here." The students filed into their classrooms one by one. Rudd sat still in his seat and continued to ponder. It must be one of those reasons. The second idea sounds more plausible, but Henneth suddenly appeared in front of him. "What are you thinking about so intently?" The two of them sat in silence, looking at each other. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Finally, Rudd spoke up, breaking the atmosphere. "I need to find someone, so I'm thinking about an effective way to find them." Henneth asked curiously, "Why not buy information from a guild?" Rudd replied indifferently, "He might come to this academy." Henneth leaned over and hugged the back of the seat in front of her. She glanced to the side and suggested a few ideas to him. Well then, try looking around the library. If you don't find him there, at least you can get a list of the students. As soon as he finished speaking, Rudd stood up to leave. Henneth bared her teeth in anger. Hey, where are you running off to now? I'm explaining it to you. Rudd ignored her and casually turned away. Library. He got up and walked ahead. Seeing this, Henneth also chased after Rudd. We only have 15 minutes before class starts. Do you want us to be late on the very first day of school? In contrast to her hurried attitude, Rudd continued to walk slowly and leisurely. Who said you had to follow me? There is no us. Henneth was so angry she was fuming. I'm worried you'll get into some trouble, which would be a pain. By the way, why did you pick a fight with the student council president? Rudd sighed and explained, I was just going to ask a few things. She was still tagging along behind Rudd. Are you an attention seeker? He replied coldly, I don't think so. Henneth said to Rudd, so do you even know where the library is? It's not over there, you idiot. Realizing he was mistaken, he stood frozen for a few seconds. Rudd was too embarrassed to turn and look at her. Henneth's voice continued to ring out. Follow me, you idiot. The two of them went to the school library together. Henneth pushed the door open. Everything inside greatly astonished her. Wow, so this is the central library. The inside of the library was bright and very spacious. Henneth looked around curiously, her eyes filled with excitement. Seriously, I want to try coming in here someday. Rudd, standing behind her, was also observing everything. So how did you find this place when it's your first time here too? Henneth turned and glared at him. Isn't it normal for a student to have to memorize all the facilities before setting foot in the academy? After saying that, she turned away. Rudd looked at her and mumbled in reply, Yeah, I guess so. He thought to himself, I've never been here in the past. All right, first, let's check the record books. Rudd squinted in the direction of the books he needed to find. Rudd reached up to search for each book on the shelf. Student roster. It must be this one, right? As he was concentrating on his search, Henneth behind him excitedly shouted, Holy cow, Itoni's Herb Catalog. Hasn't this book been out of print for ages? Whoa, there's even a first edition of Understanding Magic here too. You probably couldn't buy this even if you had the money. Rudd ignored her and continued his search. After he found the list, he opened it. Asir. He checked each name in the book one by one. Unable to find it, a bewildered Rudd raised his hand to bite his finger. Not there. Rudd's eyes were somewhat stunned. If he doesn't exist in this world, maybe it's because of that damn bastard. The Void Dragon Saknin is a Dragon Lord one who commands and controls dimensions as well as realms of nothingness. In the battle before I returned, he disappeared along with my brother's body. If that skill moved him to another dimension, Rudd closed the book. Maybe he's still alive in that dimension, but of course that Void Dragon might be there too. He put the book back in its place and went to find Henneth. Hey, we should go back. Before he could finish, Henneth's voice interrupted him. Why can't I'm only borrowing 17 books. In the distance, she was arguing with the librarian. She frowned and patiently explained, students can borrow 3 books at a time. You two seem to be new students, right? Isn't it still class time now? Not wanting to get involved in trouble, Rudd turned to leave, leaving Henneth to awkwardly explain to the librarian. We were just on our way to class. Then I'll just borrow these 3. Hey, wait for me. The two of them hurried back to the classroom. Henneth let out a sigh of relief. Almost late for class. She placed the stack of books on the desk and bent over, panting heavily. A second later, Henneth asked him, So did you find the person you were looking for? Rudd turned to look at her and shook his head. Not yet. His name isn't on the student roster. Henneth asked curiously, In that case, I think you'll need help from a guild. Who is it you're looking for? My brother. Just as Rudd's words came out, the teacher's voice suddenly rang out. Hello, everyone. Daniel tapped his chest and introduced himself. I am Daniel, the instructor who will be teaching basic combat for this entire school year. This is just one subject, but if you plan to take weapon or martial arts classes, you'll be seeing a lot more of me. As he spoke, he raised his hand and rubbed his chin with amusement. Daniel gave a sly smile. For the next 4 years, you will go through training no different from hell on earth." The students below began to whisper amongst themselves. "It's Daniel. He's a super high leveler. This is amazing. I didn't think I'd get to see him here." His next words made the enthusiastically discussing students suddenly freeze in silence. "You will work as interns for the guilds in your 3rd year. And you'll start taking tests like theses in your 4th year. It's not much. You'll just feel like you're dying and being reborn over and over again." Daniel smiled, gently encouraging them. "Don't worry too much. As long as you work hard with a little talent, it's not impossible." Rudd and Henneth listened intently from below. He frowned in thought. What he means is no matter how hard you try, you can't do it without talent. I wonder how much despair and shame I went through just to gain that little bit of talent. Daniel raised his hand and clapped a few times. "Because today is the first day this is enough. For your few years of study at this academy, do your best and don't regret anything." That's all I wanted to say. He smiled as he gave his advice. A few students still had questions. "Sir, what about the dormitories?" Daniel crossed his arms and hesitated in his reply. "About that." Seeing him get up to leave, Henneth asked, "Where are you planning to go this time?" "The dorms aren't in that direction." Rudd's face was cold as he replied, "I already know that." Henneth looked at him with confusion. "He doesn't know where the library is, but he knows where the dorms are." Rudd stepped outside. He pulled his collar down a bit. As he walked, Rudd thought, Dragon Knight. As its name suggests, it refers to a dragon slayer. In all combat theories, physical strength is the most fundamental necessity. So there are free training rooms in every corner for us to train our physical strength. This is the training room I used to use when I was a kid. Rudd approached a room with its door already open. He touched the door and observed everything inside. Just like I remember. Rudd took off his outer jacket. Let's see. Let's see if I still have the same stamina as before." Rudd grabbed the pull-up bar above. He started doing pull-ups continuously. 10. Sweat in Rudd's face. 20. Thirsty. Stop. Sweat dripped from him onto the ground. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, Rudd let go and sat down on the ground, panting heavily. "I think I get it. My current limit, I'm no better than garbage." He bit his lip lightly and thought, well, it's not that surprising since I'm only 17 right now. But seriously, there's only one thing I like about this body. Starting tomorrow, I'll begin my new combat classes, and I only have 1 week before the sparring matches with other students begin. Rudd sat in a corner, lost in thought. He looked up at the ceiling. I don't want what happened last time to repeat itself. I need to do better than I did before I returned. But what I need right now is endurance and strength. After a short rest, he pushed himself up. Rudd stretched to warm up his body. Well, I was always a master of diligent training anyway. Suddenly, there was a faint noise behind Rudd. He turned his head and glanced. A figure was standing at the door. That familiar shadow? Could it be? I didn't think I'd have to meet him this soon. Balak slowly came into Rudd's view. He remembered his past life. Like Henneth, he was also a comrade in his previous life. Balak. He glanced around indifferently. Chapter 3. Balak, a pure hand-to-hand combatant specializing in physical damage who would later earn the title of Fist King. Rudd, holding a dumbbell, turned his head to look at Balak. But I never met him here in my past life. Back then, I started coming to this gym after the midterms. I should have met him in the Mana training room. Could it be because the timing is different? Just ignore him, no need to. He didn't care and turned back to wipe his sweat. Behind him, Balak raised his hand to take off his shirt. He approached Rudd and glanced at him. Balak reached out and picked up a dumbbell. A moment later, Rudd switched to back exercises. Balak did the same. When Rudd lifted the weight, Balak also mimicked him. Seeing this, Rudd could do nothing but feel helpless. After a while, he couldn't take it anymore. Rudd slammed the dumbbell onto the ground with a loud thud. Rudd exploded, shouting and cursing. "Damn it! Do you want to fight or something?" Balak looked up at him blankly and replied, "Why would you think that I'm just training?" Seeing his reaction only made Rudd even more furious. If you're training, then train. Why the hell are you staring at me? And why are your weights heavier than mine? Balak put his hands on his knees. I'm sorry if my actions made you misunderstand. He glanced coolly at Rudd. Your movements and posture are so perfect that I wanted to copy them. He didn't expect such an answer from Balak. Rudd stood frozen in confusion. What? Balak replied. Your weightlifting posture, the way your muscles move, it's all very beautiful. He continued, no one in my family, not even my father, has ever achieved such perfect movements. Could it be that you're a god of physical strength? Rudd introduced himself helplessly. No, I'm Rudd, a new student. Balak replied in surprise. What a coincidence, I'm also a new student. Balak, Rudd, from now on, I'll consider you my coach, okay? Balak patted his chest and looked at him sincerely. I believe that one day you will surpass this beautiful body. So, fitness coach Rudd, can you take me as your student from now on? Hearing this gave Rudd goosebumps. He bluntly rejected Balak's offer. No! The next day at the Academy's training grounds. The third outdoor training ground at Agridium. Daniel's voice rang out steadily. Choosing a main weapon is very important for laying the foundation of your fighting style. Usually the school will suggest a weapon before you enroll, but he crossed his arms with enthusiasm. Trying other weapons isn't a bad idea either. Feel free to choose. After hearing this, the students went to choose their own weapons. This longsword is very light, probably because it's made for students. In the distance, Rudd was also intently choosing a weapon. He touched a sword and felt it. As expected of the best academy on the continent. The weapons they provide are of very good quality, even though it's just for practice. I think if sharpened, these weapons could be used in actual combat. On the other side, Henneth was talking to Daniel. Sir, I'm going to be a mage. Do I have to choose a weapon too? He immediately replied, a fight can happen at any time. You should learn to defend yourself even as a mage. Henneth also replied promptly. Yes. Henneth stood undecided in front of the weapon rack. Behind her, everyone was very excited. Suddenly, Rudd approached with a dagger in his hand. He said to Henneth, I think a dagger would suit you. Rudd's sudden appearance startled her. Really? Rudd continued, you can control the attack radius of a scimitar with mana, and a dagger is also easy to carry with you. In fact, in her past life, Henneth was very talented with daggers. She used them quite well whenever she had to conserve mana for magic or when suddenly attacked at close range. Henneth picked up the dagger and replied, Then I'll choose this. She turned to look at the sword Rudd had chosen, very curious. Are you going to use this sword? He drew the sword and answered, I'm not sure either. We'll see. Rudd coolly pointed the sword to one side. Looking at the sword before him, he seemed quite surprised. Pretty good. Henneth immediately wondered, You're sure after just one swing? Everyone else has to struggle to get used to their weapons. Rudd replied, Anyway, the purpose is just for practice. Their conversation was coincidentally witnessed by Daniel standing behind them. His eyes lit up with interest. A coincidence. That swing. That's not the move of a normal student. Rudd was still arguing with Henneth at this point. All weapons are equally good. She disagreed and pointed at the sword. But look, this one. Daniel looked into Rudd's eyes and thought. It feels like the final strike of a dedicated swordsman. Suddenly realizing he was being watched, Rudd turned to see Daniel had been standing behind him. Sir, can I only choose one weapon? He replied, There's no specific rule. Focusing on one weapon is more effective, but if you're interested in a secondary weapon, maybe… Rudd directly cut him off. I want to use multiple main weapons. Daniel smirked to himself, thinking, multiple main weapons. Is this arrogance or confidence? Let's see. Finally, Daniel agreed to his request. Fine. The decision is ultimately up to you anyway. With the teacher's approval, Rudd drew a new weapon. Good. Then I'll add the weapon I just chose. A slash flew past Daniel's face, making his eyes widen in surprise. Rudd brandished a spear, swiping it past Daniel's face. Spear. He held the sword with both hands and leaped forward. Rudd coolly slashed through the air. And a great sword. Finally, he jumped down and turned to Daniel. I'll borrow these three. He froze, breaking out in a cold sweat. A genius. Knows something a little different. Daniel recalled Rudd's swing. Besides the elegance and refinement, I could also see the diligence in his every strike. He approached Rudd and casually asked, "Rudd, what did you do for a living before enrolling?" He rested the sword on his shoulder and answered honestly, "I was a mercenary to make a living. I lost my family in a dragon attack." Realizing he had touched on a painful subject, Daniel immediately apologized. "Is that so? I'm sorry for asking such a sensitive question." Rudd replied nonchalantly, "It's okay, sir. It all happened in the past." He thought to himself, that should be enough to get their attention. Henneth approached him and asked, "You seem pretty good, huh?" Rudd closed his eyes and replied arrogantly, "Of course." She was helpless against Rudd's attitude. "You arrogant jerk." After saying that, Henneth couldn't help but be curious. "By the way, what you told the professor about your family. Did your parents really pass away?" Her question made Rudd freeze for a few seconds. His hand clenched his pants. A moment later, Rudd replied indifferently, "Yeah, they're all gone." Henneth couldn't help but feel awkward. "That must have been really hard, right? I'm sorry for making you remember." Rudd was very surprised by her apology. "Why are you apologizing?" "It was a long time ago, so it's nothing." Inside, Rudd was also surprised. "I didn't know she could feel guilty." Henneth didn't say anything more. Rudd stared at her. Actually, she wasn't that aloof in the past either. Noticing Rudd's constant stare, Henneth turned to him. She asked, confused, "What are you looking at?" Still, the same annoying brat. Just then a crowd had gathered in front of them. The noise came from there. Henneth craned her neck curiously, trying to see inside. "Something's happening in Class B." In the crowd, Balak and Claire were arguing fiercely. "You need to choose a weapon. Warriors of the House of Steros don't use weapons. Our bodies are our weapons." She was so angry that veins popped out on her face. "What the hell is this kid?" "Listen, Balak, even though fistfighters only use their bodies, you can at least use iron gauntlets." Balak didn't care and remained stubborn. "Warriors of the House of Steros don't use weapons." Claire helplessly put her hands on her head. "I mean," she stammered. Before she could finish, he cut in again. "Warriors of the House of Steros don't use weapons." Claire was completely helpless against him. Standing in the crowd, Henneth asked Rudd, "Who's that lunatic?" "Do you know him?" Rudd answered without thinking. "No." Daniel rushed over to pull the agitated Claire away from Balak. Senior Claire calmed down. At that moment, Balak suddenly looked towards the two of them. Henneth asked in confusion, "Huh, he's looking this way." Rudd, startled, said to her, "Let's get out of here." Seeing Rudd, Balak happily waved at him like they were close friends. Rudd thought with disgust, "Don't act like you know me, you idiot." Balak quickly ran towards where Rudd was standing. Henneth became bewildered. "Why is he coming here?" "Could it be you're his friend?" Rudd stammered in reply. I don't know." On the other side, Claire saw Balak ignoring her and became even more furious. She cursed loudly. "Hey, how dare you go play with your friend while a professor is talking to you?" Balak explained innocently. "He's not a friend. Our relationship is deeper and it's—" Afraid he would say something ridiculous, Rudd cut Balak off. "We're friends." Daniel looked at him and advised, "Balak, although using a weapon goes against your family's principles and traditions. Right now, we're in class during a training period. If you continue to refuse to choose a weapon—" Rudd bowed his head and sighed. "I guess they'll let him go just like last time." But the teacher's next words made him freeze. "You'll have to repeat a year." Rudd looked up, his eyes wide in shock. "What?" He suddenly realized the past had changed. Daniel's voice continued steadily. "If you refuse to choose a weapon, you will face failure." Rudd stood next to Balak, still in shock. Could it be that my interference has changed the past? If he loses here, it will be very difficult for our main forces to face the future Dragon Lord. He replied, "I understand. Instead of sacrificing my honor, I'd rather accept failure." Before he could finish his sentence, Rudd punched him in the mouth as a warning. "Shut up." He turned to look at Daniel awkwardly and pleaded for Balak. "Professor, Can you make an exception just this once? Daniel flatly refused. I can't make an exception just for Balak. That wouldn't be fair to the others. Rudd was confused. Then why did you make an exception in the past? He asked awkwardly. If so, he just needs to choose something right. After saying that, Rudd looked at the weapons around him. I'm sure there must be something useful here. There it is. His eyes landed on a pair of gauntlets resting on a wooden crate. Rudd picked them up and threw them at Balak. Hey, use these. He also raised his hands to catch them. Balak was still very stubborn. Rudd, a warrior from the House of Steros, doesn't use weapons. Rudd was about to go crazy with him. Is that even a weapon? It's just for defense. Balak still wouldn't give up. A warrior from the House of Steros doesn't use defensive gear. Before he could finish, Rudd yelled, Shut up! Just consider it a gift from a friend and take it. Balak moved, hugged the gauntlets to his chest, and mumbled, Friend. Claire looked at Rudd with great dissatisfaction. How is that a weapon? It's clearly an arm guard. Rudd immediately made up a reason. No, it's a weapon. Iron gauntlets are made like this nowadays. Daniel was still confused. What kind of gauntlet? Rudd cut in. As long as he chooses a weapon, it's fine, right? On the other side, Balak still stood there blankly clutching the gauntlets. In the distance, the students started to gossip. Look what's going on. Even the professors from both Class A and B are… Daniel turned to look at them and reluctantly compromised. All right, for now, let's just say it's an iron gauntlet with a unique design. Rudd let out a sigh of relief. Nice. Luckily, he gets the hint. He glanced behind him. But the important thing is, I only got away with it this time. I need to be more careful when my actions can change the future. After the weapon training session ended, Rudd returned to the classroom. He picked up a piece of paper and studied it intently. Perhaps because this is the first day of class, everything is relatively relaxed. They've only focused on theory. Rudd walked with his eyes glued to the paper in his hand, not noticing Hineth and Balak walking and talking behind him. The first week at Agridium is a time for new students to adapt, but it's also a time for professors to learn about the students' abilities and guide them. I've shown enough to attract their attention and receive a letter of recommendation, so I just want to spend the rest of my time preparing for other classes. But you're an idiot, right? Hineth's voice suddenly spoke up. He replied dryly, I'm not an idiot. I am a warrior from the House of Steros Balak. Hineth ignored his words and insisted, Exactly. Sounds like an idiot. Rudd, walking ahead, was very displeased. Why do they just randomly group me with them? Balak turned to her and said, As a mage, you wouldn't understand the honor of a martial artist. Losing honor is worse than death for a Steros. She was helpless against Balak. You people really have issues. A mocking voice suddenly rang out, leaving Balak and Hineth confused. Look at that, a bunch of show-offs. A group of students blocked the trio's path. I'm talking about you morons. The three of them said nothing and just stared at them. Rudd didn't even bother to look up at them. A moment later, he was startled and looked up. Are you talking to me? Hearing that they were furious. Who else would I be talking to? You and that pig behind you. Balak retorted, I'm not a pig, I'm a warrior from… Before he could finish, he was cut off by Balak. Get out of the way, you bastard. Who do you think you are to provoke us? And who are you calling a moron? Rudd thought to himself. Didn't you just call Balak an idiot a moment ago? Wilhelm extended his hand to introduce himself. Hineth, I quite liked your speech earlier. I don't mean to pick a fight with you. I'm Wilhelm from Class B. Hineth replied with disdain, not even bothering to shake his hand. Do I need to know your name, you idiot? Her words made Wilhelm tremble with anger, but he still tried to control his rage. I was planning to let you join my group, since it seems the valedictorian hasn't joined any yet. But now I see why you people are sticking together. Get lost, Hapwilia. I only have business with those two. Hineth played with a lock of her hair and looked at him with contempt. Is that any of your business? You're the one who needs to get lost, you lemon. And don't you dare call me by my name, you dog. Before she could finish, Rudd pushed her aside. Move over. He stepped forward and asked, What's your business? Wilhelm bared his teeth in a sneer. My business simple. Are you guys so desperate for attention you can't stand still? Why don't you know your place? Rudd didn't understand what he was talking about. Wilhelm continued to ramble. I'm telling you to stop those stupid actions to attract the professor's attention. You think being able to use multiple weapons is so great, huh? And that pig over there spouting nonsense about not using weapons. If you're going to enter this academy with that kind of thinking, you might as well just quit. Rudd's face was expressionless, but inside he didn't deny it. Well, it's true, I deliberately did that earlier to attract attention. But even if I didn't stand out, there would still be untalented guys like this talking nonsense about me. I remember clearly in my past life, Wilhelm's gang burst out laughing gleefully. The memories flooded back into his mind. Hey, an orphan. What can a useless, untalented guy like you do? They mocked Rudd's pain. I don't understand how a guy like you got into this school. So pitiful. Did someone help you get in through the back door? Oh, right. You don't have parents. Just as the guy finished speaking, Rudd came out of nowhere and kicked him, breaking his front teeth. Back then, I was an impulsive kid, so I fought them. But this time, I'll handle it more maturely. Rudd bowed his head and calmly replied, is that so? But he'd still win even if you used 500 weapons against him. Wilhelm was angry, thinking he was being looked down upon. What the heck, don't be ridiculous. Rudd nonchalantly pointed to Balak. Oh, even I can take down a weakling like that with my bare hands. Henneth would make you disappear. Being looked down on, Wilhelm's face turned red with anger. You, he gritted his teeth and shouted, you bastard! You attention-seeking piece of trash, you're dead. Wilhelm raised his fist and lunged at Rudd. He put his hands in his pockets and easily dodged his punch. Because he missed, Wilhelm's body lost its balance, and he fell to the ground crying out in pain. Henneth raised her hand to her chin and laughed mockingly at Wilhelm. He lay on the ground, his face red with anger. You addict! Without much thought, Wilhelm got up and was about to swing his sword to confront Rudd. Realizing the situation had gone too far, Henneth shouted a warning at him. Hey, using weapons outside the training grounds is forbidden. Wilhelm ignored her and raised his sword. Shut up! He leaped up, aiming his sword at Rudd's back. When the sword was just a hand's breadth away, Rudd stood still, not dodging. You despicable bastard! But thanks to this, I'll have a chance to test this new body and the move I learned from Balak in my past life. Rudd raised his fist and successfully blocked his sword. Wilhelm stared in shock as the sword flew behind him. Rudd was very pleased with himself. The no-hand parry style. Just as Wilhelm was still in shock, Rudd took off and ran towards him. Wilhelm's eyes looked at him in terror, as if he were a demon. Rudd forcefully delivered a painful blow to his head. Wilhelm immediately cried out in agony. Wilhelm collapsed onto the floor. Seeing this, his two lackeys' faces turned pale with fear. Rudd warned them, consider this a lesson. Witnessing his move, Balak was very surprised. That's my family's technique. Suddenly, a shout rang out. What's going on here? Claire rushed towards them. Why is he crawling on the floor like this? Is it you guys again? Get out of the way now. The fat guy standing next to them pointed at Rudd's group and tattled, that guy hit Wilhelm first. Henneth couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up to retort. Lies? They started it with us first and then took out their weapons. Rudd was just defending himself. That's right, Balak also added. Rudd didn't use a weapon either. Claire looked down to observe the situation. He was actually able to disarm that guy with his bare hands in that situation. Can a new student do that without getting hurt? She turned to instruct the two who were with Wilhelm. You guys take that unconscious kid to the infirmary. The two of them quickly helped him up. After speaking, Claire pointed at Rudd's group and ordered, and Rudd come to my office after class. The two guys carried Wilhelm away, still talking tough. You just wait. Claire walked past and yelled, take him to the infirmary. Henneth watched them go and asked, what's wrong with those bastards? Besides, what move did you use to send his sword flying like that? Rudd replied nonchalantly, a parry. Henneth was very dissatisfied with his answer. Do you think I don't know it's a parry? I'm asking how you did it with your bare hands. She turned to ask Balak. Hey, idiot, do you know how? He answered honestly, the adults in my family can do it, but I haven't learned it yet. Rudd, could it be that you're my long-lost brother? Rudd didn't dare look at them and turned his face away. I can't say he taught me in my past life. He replied awkwardly, what nonsense are you talking about? No, I'm not. What was it? It was just luck. Rudd was very embarrassed. I, as you can see, am a genius. Henneth looked at him with suspicion. Balak believed every word Rudd said. I see. Great as expected of my physical training master. Henneth still didn't believe him. Huh, is that really the explanation? Hey, tell us the trud. You're hiding something, aren't you? Rudd, startled, replied, of course not. Balak immediately defended him. Even if he is hiding something, a good friend shouldn't keep prying into someone else's business, Henneth. Don't you have a secret or two you can't talk about? Hearing that made sense, she reluctantly compromised. That's true. But wait, who said we're friends? I haven't even known you guys for 2 days. Balak shyly touched his nose. Then I guess from now on we'll be friends. Please be kind to me. Henneth was helpless against his naivety. Are you really an idiot? Balak tried to persuade her. You shouldn't call your friend an idiot. Henneth could only scream in desperation. This is so frustrating. Watching them argue like that, the image of them from before appeared in his mind. Stay away from me, you overgrown limb. When you get close, I get hot. Your body heat disgusts me. Shouldn't a fire mage be good with heat? Stop it, you two. Seeing Rudd had been silent for a while, Balak called out to him, We're going to be late for class, Rudd. Henneth turned to leave as she spoke. Hey, what are you still doing? Let's go. Rudd turned and walked into the classroom. There was always a ghost in his heart. No one has to die. Not a single person. No one has to die. Not this time. Rudd turned his back and walked out of the room. Well then, I'll be on my way now. Claire shot up and watched his retreating figure. All right, go get some rest. In her heart, she knew who was right and who was wrong. He didn't do anything wrong, but I wanted to try talking to him nicely first because he looks like the type of person who usually talks with his fists first. Claire poured coffee into a cup. She thought to herself, but that's not necessary anymore. 20 minutes earlier, Rudd walked into the room bowing in apology to Claire's surprise. I'm very sorry for causing trouble. He sincerely recounted everything that had happened. He insulted my friends, so I unintentionally... And then he started swinging his sword. So I was worried my friends might get hurt, so I tried to subdue him. But in the end, I went a bit too far. I should have acted more moderately and maturely about it. I'm truly sorry. Thinking of this, she smiled brightly and thought, he's so kind and mature, especially when compared to that Wilhelm kid. I definitely won't go easy on him during training. Thinking of Wilhelm, her expression changed 180 degrees. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Claire quickly answered. She was very surprised to see it was Daniel. Come in. What brings you here? Daniel awkwardly opened the door and entered. Are you kidding me? The teacher's meeting for the new student classes is happening in your office. That's why I'm here. You're the stubborn one who insisted on holding the meeting here because you were too lazy to go to the other rooms. Claire retorted, What are you talking about? When was I ever stubborn? I was just suggesting it. Daniel teased her. If you keep making suggestions like this, I'll end up being a cricket spun by you. After him, 2 other people also entered Claire's room at the same time. Arthur frowned in dissatisfaction at Claire. Do you know how many times I've been called to the administration office just because of you? The homeroom teacher of Class D, Arthur. Next to him was Damien, the homeroom teacher of Class C, Damien Gray. Claire looked annoyed. What did I do that you keep nagging me? Arthur got even angrier. It's because you do things worth nagging about. Bothering everyone for your office. Claire scratched her head and looked around. I didn't buy that much. Just an air purifier and a long leather couch. Damien, standing behind, added indifferently. And a flower vase with a swallow pattern worth 3 million ziv. Claire suddenly yelled, Damien, I told you to keep that a secret for me. Arthur sighed helplessly at Claire. Whatever, that's enough. Just remember to check the schedule carefully next time. A professor like you shouldn't forget about meetings in your own office, right? Claire clicked her tongue in disgust. You have to be so meticulous, don't you? That's why your hair is falling out. Arthur looked at her with anger. What? Claire pretended she hadn't said anything. I didn't say anything. Daniel sat to the side, smiling to mediate. Come on, everyone calm down. Why don't we just start the meeting now? This year's students are much more skilled than last year's. Arthur looked at the file in front of him and continued, the graduation rate is going to be high. Claire picked up the file and studied it intently. That's not for sure. They may be talented, but they also need psychological support. Isn't nurturing young minds also part of a teacher's duty? Arthur asked the other three for their opinions. Are there any students we should keep an eye on? Damien replied, no one in Class C, they're all quite excellent. Remembering the recent incident, Claire mocked, there's a kid in Class B who's both crazy and dumb. Arthur looked at her with annoyance. You have a nice way with words. The idiot today must be the troublemaker kid. So, what do you mean by crazy? There's this guy who keeps rambling about the shame of a warrior, even about the smallest things. And it's quite annoying. He focused on Balak's file. Balak, his written test was terrible, but his practical combat skills are incredibly good. From the family that loves hand-to-hand combat, the muscle-addicted Steros, right? Daniel's eyes lit up with interest. His skills are the real deal. I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of him. His hand tightened slightly on the profile sheet. Looking back now, I have two potential characters in my class. From the famous mage family Hapulia, the second child Hineth, and a student named Rudd. Damien was curious. Hineth Hapulia, the one at the top of the academy. Since she's a fire mage, the White Flame Queen will definitely take notice of her. Arthur, sitting next to him, also wondered about Rudd. What about the other kid? Does he come from a famous family? Daniel placed the paper on the table and answered, no. It's a rather long story to explain, so it'll be faster if you look here yourselves. They gathered around and read together. Damien looked very skeptical. Is this really an academy? Arthur continued. He almost failed both the written and practical exams. He lost his family and has been working as a mercenary to survive ever since. Daniel confidently affirmed, you'll change your minds when you see him with your own eyes. This assertion might be a bit hasty, but I think he might be the strongest student this year. Claire and Arthur looked at him with suspicion. He turned to ask Claire, well, then that kid must be no ordinary person if he can make you say that. Claire must have met him in class already, right? She immediately smiled brightly like a flower. He protected his friends, and his words were incredibly righteous. He's a good student. I had a good impression of him right away, so I want him to be in my class. Seeing everyone's strange attitude, Claire was very curious. What? Why are you guys looking at me so strangely? Daniel asked. So even you can praise a student, she replied nonchalantly. I do that sometimes. Anyway, as I was saying, Claire recounted what had just happened. Do you guys remember the idiot playing with the sword I mentioned earlier? Rudd was the one who took him down with his bare hands, no less. She pointed to the file on the table and asked, he used a sword in the entrance exam. What about his martial arts skills? Daniel replied, there's only one thing we can be sure of, he has a talent for martial arts. Claire picked up her coffee cup and closed her eyes to savor it. So don't you think that I, as a hand-to-hand combat instructor, should be his teacher? Daniel bluntly stated his opinion. That would be a bit difficult. He became serious. His real talent lies in using weapons like spears and swords. I would be a much better fit. Claire frowned in annoyance. Oh my, since when did you become so interested in a student's potential? Daniel didn't back down either. He is a student in my class. It would be most effective if I were also his professor. Claire added, stop kidding. He parried with his bare hands. For what reason do you think he'd be good with weapons? Daniel angrily yelled at her. I was the first one to notice Rudd's talent. I won't give him to you even if you are my senior dia. Claire slammed her hand on the table and stood up furiously. Is that so? Maybe this time I'll have to drill the senior-junior relationship into your head properly. Daniel immediately brought up the past. Have you forgotten you lost a bet to me 2 weeks ago? Suddenly, a hand slammed down on the table, shattering it into many pieces. Arthur angrily shouted, "Both of you sit down." Is that how people who call themselves professors should behave? Looking at the broken table, Claire felt a pang of regret. This was very expensive. My table. Daniel next to her also calmly sat down. Arthur glanced at Damien, who had been sitting quietly for his opinion. "Well then, Damien, do you have any opinion?" He replied nonchalantly, "I'm fine. What student would want a teacher who looks as scary as me?" Hearing that, Arthur sighed. If he's good with spears, maybe I should meet him too. There's still a whole week before the sparring class for us to fill out the recommendation form, so you two should calm down. Even if all of us want to take him on, it ultimately depends on the student's choice, he said as he picked up the profile sheet. Arthur's eyes showed some surprise. This student is from Gisol. Claire sat with her legs crossed, confused. Gisol, Arthur continued. Yes, 10 years ago. This was the village that disappeared after the manifold incident. As soon as he finished speaking, the other three stared with wide, shocked eyes. The manifold incident was a tragedy that destroyed half of the southern kingdom of Calavan 10 years ago. This stemmed from a decline in national power and eventually led to its complete disappearance from the map after a few years. A single dragon brought destruction to an entire country. Its true form is a mystery because it can transform into anything. Arthur wondered, the manifold dragon Kianan, one of the 7 dragon scions. Daniel, didn't you also participate in its subjugation? Daniel bowed his head and sighed. The one who killed the manifold dragon was my master. At that time, I was just a new, inexperienced soldier and could only hold on to that dragon's toe. Arthur spoke up to comfort him. Surviving and returning is already an incredibly impressive feat. Anyway, it seems he was also a victim of the manifold incident. That entire land was completely leveled. Who would have thought anyone could survive? Daniel recalled the devastating scene from that time. He pondered thoughtfully. Does he want revenge for that incident? Does he harbor such intense hatred for the dragon race? A genius with talent far beyond my own. Arthur picked up the profile sheet and continued speaking. To have the good fortune to survive on his own until now, and to have his talent recognized by Daniel. But I want to correct one thing you said. Daniel turned his head in surprise. What? Arthur replied. You said Rudd is the strongest student this year, but there's still a rival in Class D. Another genius with what could be called monstrous talent. 199, 200. BRTE continuously counted each number in an exhausted tone. When he reached 200, he stopped and exhaled with difficulty. Coach, I've already completed 3 sets of push-ups twice. Hearing this, Claire was unfazed. Good. Next up is 2,000 8-step burpees. BRTE was stunned. What? Seeing his slowness, Claire lost her patience. What are you waiting for? When are you going to get up? At the same time, others were doing physical training in the general class. After completing the exercise, Rudd returned the weight to its original position. Now I can use it. He stood up and took a towel to dry his face. He couldn't help but calculate in his head 3 more days until the sparring match. And now I can finally use the breathing techniques and stances I used in my past life to some extent. I hope it's enough for me to achieve what I want. While he was still busy thinking, the constant sound of wind blowing in his ears made Rudd a bit annoyed. He turned in annoyance to look at Balak next to him, who was still making that noise. Can't you shut your mouth and train? Being called out, Balak didn't pay any mind to Rudd and just calmly continued training. Strength comes from breathing. Rudd couldn't help but snap. What kind of nonsense is that? Are you saying you'll be as strong as a bear by panting like a bear? Balak still didn't react to that rude attitude and just calmly looked at Rudd. Rudd, the reason you can't lift weights like this is because you don't have the breath. Rudd was a bit indifferent and didn't want to listen. Shut up. In the end, Rudd still turned back to look at the other person. Say what you want, but train properly. Every time you pant, that dumbbell gets all wobbly. Hearing that, Balak grunted skeptically. Then he took a deep breath as if to test it and immediately looked at Rudd with some surprise. You're right. I can feel my muscles tensing up more. He put the dumbbell back in its place, smiling at Rudd. You're good, my master. Hearing that Rudd was just indifferent, whatever, Kenneth approached from behind looking a bit annoyed. Ugh, it stinks. Are you even human anymore? How on earth can you train continuously for 3 hours without resting? Balak paid no mind to Hineth's complaint and calmly looked at her. When you feel like your own muscles are growing, then you'll know how exhilarating it feels. Oh, and by the way, Hineth, you're too skinny. Then he approached his attitude, seemingly a bit excited. I'll guide you. We should start training, right? Hineth showed a look of avoidance. My body is normal. Don't come near me. You reek of bull, Balak suddenly commented again. Why are all the women in this academy so fragile? None of them are like the women at my home. You all look like starved stray dogs. Hearing him say that, Hineth was furious. Did you just call me a dog? Do you want to die or something? Rudd left the two of them to their confrontation and turned to leave. Seeing this, Hineth was a bit curious. Hey, where are you going? Rudd simply replied, just getting a drink of water. Hearing that, Hineth also approached. Wait, let's go together. Hey, blockhead, what about you? Hearing Hineth's question, Balak immediately refused. I'll lose muscle if I walk. But if you get me a protein drink, that would be great. Hineth, seemingly not wanting to hear him talk anymore, quickly left. Let's go, Rudd. Then, as the two of them went outside, they immediately ran into another girl. Hineth was a bit surprised. Someone's here. Hearing a noise, Leon turned around and saw Rudd and Hineth. Over here, Hineth seemed to feel that something had just changed. She stared in shock at the silent Rudd. His gaze towards that direction had darkened somewhat. A fragment of memory from his past life rushed back, bringing with it a cold voice. I thought you'd be stronger because you're Aesir's brother, but I guess I was wrong. A person in boots stood on the ground. Opposite was Rudd, in such a miserable state he couldn't even stand up. He looked up with a hateful expression at the person before him. Leon. Rudd called out silently. The other person, a genius master swordsman, a sword saint, a knight as strong as my brother. One of the strongest dragon slayers, the first person to show me a wall I couldn't overcome. Rudd couldn't help but get angry. He gritted his teeth, his hand clenched into a fist. His voice couldn't hide the hatred. You just wait. I'll remember that face of yours. In reality, the two faced each other again. Root looked at her, remembering the past, and couldn't help but get annoyed and curse under his breath. Damn it! I didn't even get a chance for revenge if I hadn't died back then. The current Leon, seeing his expression, also didn't hesitate to face him. Root's annoyed state made Hineth next to him wary. Move! His blunt words and attitude made Leon frown. What Root repeated again. I said, get lost. He looked at Leon with an arrogant gesture. Are you deaf? Hearing this, Leon seemed unwilling to back down either. She clenched the empty can in her hand. Then she forcefully threw the can at Root. He reacted and quickly dodged. When he looked again, Leon was no longer there. Vanished. Suddenly, something rushed towards him. Root also quickly realized it. Leon suddenly appeared in front of him. She swung her leg, aiming straight for Root's head. He quickly noticed her appearance and reached out to block the attack. Leon was now surprised. He blocked it. Well then. Then she spun and swung her leg, freeing it from his hand. Then she turned, intending to throw another kick. Try blocking this one, Leon thought to herself, as the attack was about to reach him. Root once again easily sidestepped to avoid it. Missing her attack twice made Leon astonished. Again, Hineth next to them couldn't watch anymore and wanted to intervene. Hey, what are you guys doing? Leon stopped her attack. She stared at Root, silently judging. I thought he was just an idiot, but he's dodged my attacks twice. Leon maintained her unfriendly attitude towards Root. Are you trying to pick a fight with me because I was recommended into the academy? He also didn't back down and maintained a grumpy look. What the hell are you rambling about? You're in our way. Hearing that, Leon couldn't help but freeze. Root nonchalantly walked past her. His tone didn't change. I'm so damn thirsty, and you're just standing here blocking the way. Leon watched him approach the vending machine, her gaze a little confused. I misunderstood. Hearing her voice, Root acted as if he didn't care and was still grumpy. What now? Why are you still hanging around here? Suddenly Leon asked out of the blue. What's your name? Root didn't hesitate to answer either. Root. Having gotten her answer, Leon wanted to leave. I'll remember your name. Then she left in one motion. Root was blunt. Whatever. Seeing the other person just leave like that, Kenneth got annoyed. Hey, shouldn't you apologize first? Who do you think you are? Meanwhile, Root was lost in thought after his encounter with his old rival. Damn it, I almost broke my wrist. I just wanted to test her abilities, but she still has that insane strength. Kenneth then turned to ask about him. Are you okay? Does it hurt? Didn't you see me stop her? Stop her more like broke my damn wrist. No, it's nothing. Shut up and let's go to the infirmary to check. Saying that, she pushed him along. Back in the general classroom, Balak saw the two return and was a bit curious. Root, are you hurt? Seeing Root was so injured he had to be bandaged, he shouted, What? Who hurt you? Hearing the noise from afar, Claire strode towards Root, unable to hide her worry. Oh my God, what happened? Root felt a bit pressured. It was just a small accident. Hearing the commotion, Daniel also approached. What happened? Kenneth took the opportunity of having many people around to speak loudly. He was beaten up by a kid. Hearing her say that, Root became flustered. Huh, I wasn't beaten up. It was just a small argument? Claire asked somewhat angrily. So, who hit Root? Seeing the situation worsening, Root wanted to stop it. No. But Kenneth quickly told Claire everything. She's a new student. She has white hair and golden eyes, and she mentioned being recommended. Hearing that, both Daniel and Claire looked at each other in shock. Leon from Class D, Claire suddenly became annoyed. Let go of me. I'm not letting this go. I'm going to teach her a lesson. Daniel quickly stopped her. Claire, calm down. Claire became even more furious. I can't let this slide this time, even if Root started it. She's hurt too many people already. The people around heard the commotion and couldn't help but be curious. What's wrong? It seems like someone in our class got beat up. Claire continued to shout, Why would she hit a good person like him? Ian, Daniel then spoke up. I'm not telling you to let it go, but as an instructor, there are more tactful ways. Hearing that Claire was a bit confused. More tactful? Then Daniel leaned down slightly and whispered to Claire. If you can't control things and cause a scene, Arthur, the one in charge of Class D, will control the situation and say he'll handle everything. First, just avoid the complaints from her guardian, the leader of the Dragon Slayer army. Claire suddenly seemed to understand the other's plan. He definitely knows how to handle things professionally, so he'll probably ask Arthur to handle it. Then we can do what we want, blame Arthur, and increase our credibility to punish that aggressive child, right? Not bad, huh? Daniel was a bit excited. That's right. There's no reason to make a big deal out of this. Just punish her with her grades, make her do volunteer work for the academy remedial classes. But of course, since we want her to change her attitude, no one will complain if those classes are a bit too harsh, right? Meanwhile, Root was so embarrassed he didn't dare look at the people around him. Balak quickly approached him, completely oblivious to the two who were secretly plotting. He must be a genius. Balak approached and commented calmly, Root, it seems the teachers love you too much. Congratulations. Root was sulking and didn't feel happy about the compliment at all. Shut up. Balak continued, Don't be too heartbroken. Get over it and be a man. Root absolutely couldn't stand the other person talking anymore and became grumpy. Shut up now. 3 days later, in a packed auditorium, a loud voice rang out. It seems everyone is here. Students, please line up by your class. The high-level teachers all seemed to be present. Everyone was very expectant. Now we will begin the combined sparring match. Below, the students were chatting excitedly when a sudden announcement rang out. Well, then we will now begin the training session, including Class A and B. In this practical session, each person will be assigned a number. You will also get to choose your own opponent. You cannot choose the same person twice, so each of you will only have 2 matches today. The explanation is done. Students, good luck. Root coolly pursed his lips and observed his surroundings. In this practical session, the teachers will be on the second floor observing the students below and making their evaluations. The teachers quickly moved to the second floor as an announcement also rang out. Number 1 Helion, step onto the field and choose your opponent. Calling this a practical session is just a formality. In reality, it's a capability assessment. Henneth spoke up to explain. This is a meritocracy. No one cares about a student's background or past. Instead, they will judge based on talent and skill. That is one of the reasons why ActionToon is the number 1 school. It can be said that every student here is a genius in some aspect. Root, hearing this, felt very confused. I've never heard anyone call me that before. The announcement sounded again. Number 8 Hanneth. She was excited even so. They became useless in front of the real thing. She confidently stepped forward. Balak from behind was cheering her on. Go Hanneth, real genius Hanneth. His shouting made Hanneth very embarrassed, while Root just stood there laughing. Root glanced at Hanneth and thought to himself, a mage with limited close combat ability is choosing a swordsman as an opponent. Hanneth is really confident. After she stepped onto the arena, a voice from the second floor announced both sides ready and begin. Hanneth chose her opponent as Helion. She closed her eyes to focus on casting her magic. A second later, Hanneth summoned countless fireballs. Her eyes and smile were filled with confidence. Hanneth aimed the fireball straight at Helion. He calmly looked up and observed. Helion quickly used his shield to block Hanneth's attack. Fortunately, the fireball wasn't too fast. So, before she could cast another spell, I will end this with a single blow. He moved to dodge the fireballs while strongly rushing towards Hanneth. The sharp tip of Helion's sword aimed straight at her. Before it could touch Hanneth, a cloud of white smoke appeared, obstructing his view. Helion frowned and gritted his teeth. The smoke gradually dissipated, revealing Hanneth's feet. Helion looked at her in surprise. Damn it, how did she get there? He used his sword to continuously block Hanneth's attacks. She continuously used magic to aim straight at Helion. He covered his nose and thought, another magic attack, I must block it. Hanneth suddenly shouted, Got you. She stood in the middle of the white smoke, a sinister smile on her face. Hanneth got close to Helion and pointed a dagger at his neck, making him freeze. Damn it, I didn't think a mage would fight in close combat. How could someone from a noble family use such a risky strategy? Helion was scared and swallowed his saliva nervously. Finally, he sat down on the ground and surrendered. I give up. At the same time, the announcement sounded, the winner is Hanneth. Both of them did very well. Hanneth raised her head and smiled happily. She glanced at Liana standing on the second floor and asked herself, Did I do well, Miss Liana? Liana rested her chin on her hand and smiled mysteriously. Liana, the professor from the Maze Guild. It's over. Hanneth happily ran down the arena. Root looked at her with surprise. How did she get the guts to fight a swordsman? Hanneth proudly stated, I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. Those swordsmen don't think mages can fight them in close combat, do they? Root sighed in relief, but it was quite dangerous. If the opponent realized it sooner, it would be very disadvantageous. But what can I say, she's always like that. Such a flashy fighting style is suitable for a mage like her. The 3 people stood below, laughing and talking happily. Claire on the floor above watched the 3 of them and complimented a person with good combat thinking and top-notch reflexes. Her magic is also very perfect. I wish I had a better place to observe the match. Arthur next to her also nodded in agreement. She said rightly, a mage fighting like this is rare. We should hire another instructor, a fire element one would be even better. Next, step out and choose your opponent. Claire's face was full of curiosity. Let me see who's next. Wynnum stepped out and angrily pointed straight at Root's face and shouted, Get out here, Root. I lost last time, but this time will be different. Hearing this, Claire froze. The 3 of them stood there in disbelief. That useless guy, what's wrong with him? Root laughed out loud and stepped forward. If you want it that way, I'll indulge you. I appreciate your persistence, but I'll lead you to the slaughterhouse. He closed his eyes to calm himself. and warm up his hands and feet. The match had just begun. The students below could only hear Winham's shouts, "Come on, wait you dog." His shouts became more and more frequent. The students watching could only feel bored with him. When he couldn't take Root's blows anymore, Winham shouted out his surrender, "I lose, I surrender." Root put his hands in his pockets and calmly replied, "Thank you for fighting to the end. You were very persistent, Winham." At this point, he was lying on a stretcher with a pale face thinking, "Damn it, I already surrendered." The instructor holding the list in his hand spoke up, "Well done. Next, Root. It's you again. If you're tired, I'll move you down the order." Root confidently replied, "No, I can still continue." He replied, "All right, then choose your opponent." Root's eyes narrowed as he looked forward. He raised his hand and spoke with a challenging voice, "Come on. Up, Balak." Balak hesitated and didn't say a word. Then he stepped onto the arena. Balak wanted to refuse Root's invitation. "Root, I don't want to fight you." He didn't care, and arrogantly replied, "You have to fight me because you're the strongest here." Balak frowned and explained, "Friends of the Steros clan, we don't fight with friends." Root provoked him, "So you're going to run away like a coward?" Balak, deep in thought. Balak is strong. In the past life, the earth used to shake when he took a step, and mountains fell when he threw a punch. But this time, that much won't be enough. Even if I must trigger you by mocking your nobility, you gotta get one step closer to perfection, Fizzard King. I learned a lot from losing to you. Now it's your turn." Balak was very hesitant at his words, but Steros clan warriors don't run away like cowards. Root smiled in satisfaction. "Then that's good." He held out his hand to Balak. "I will make your potential manifest." Before stepping into the match, he seriously looked at Root. "You're stronger than me, so I won't ask you to use a sword from the start, but I hope you will fight with all your might." Root smiled and replied, "Of course, even if you want me to do that." The instructor stood between the two, ready. His hand had just come down. Root and Balak rushed at each other. And begin. The two's fight was like a real battlefield. Chapter 8. Memories of the past suddenly rushed back. Root was concentrating on practicing his sword when someone called him. Root, hearing the call, glanced back. Balak slowly walked over. "I came here at his request. He asked me to tell you to calm down because your behavior has been a bit out of control lately." As soon as he finished, Root turned away with a disgusted expression. "Brother, don't make me laugh. If that bastard wants to pick a fight, tell him to come himself." Balak advised him that's not very likely. "Besides, don't you think your words are a bit too harsh? Eris is your family." Root angrily threw the wooden sword to the side. He frowned and swore, "Hey, you fat pig, you should shut up and get out of here. Family my ass." Balak calmly replied, "I'm not a pig. You're challenging me." Root was furious and rushed to grab his collar and warned, "If you keep poking your nose in my business, I'll kill you." In contrast to Root's unfriendly attitude, Balak still calmly looked at him. "Warriors of the Steros clan don't run away from a fight, you know." His words made Root very agitated. He shouted, "Well, then come at me, you bastard." Later, Root was lying on the ground completely defeated. He just muttered to himself and swore, "Damn it, you fat pig. You're pretty strong." Balak didn't care and walked over to the sword. He picked it up and pointed the sword at Root. "You too, Root." Root misunderstood and became even more angry. "Are you mocking me?" Balak calmly replied, "I'm serious, even though I'm stronger." Back in the present, Rudd stared at him. "After being beaten to a pulp by Leon and this bastard, I realized I wasn't that talented after all." Balak readied his body and rushed towards him. Brimming with fighting spirit, he poured all his strength into his foot and stomped, shattering the ground beneath him. A second later, Balak charged fiercely at Rudd like a storm. Both of them unleashed their attacks. Rudd was quicker, landing a powerful punch on Balak's chin. Balak couldn't hide his surprise at the blow. Rudd then landed another heavy blow to Balak's stomach, giving him no time to react. He raised his leg to strike Balak, but it was blocked. Balak then spun around, seizing the opportunity to attack Rudd. His elbow blocked Balak's attack. Balak placed a hand on Rudd's shoulder and squeezed tightly. He spun to evade Balak's hand, his eyes wide with astonishment. He stepped back, dodging another of Balak's attacks. "You dodged it this time," Balak said. Rudd looked at him and smiled. That was obviously just a feint. I'm not crazy enough to let you catch me. Though he said that inwardly he was still shocked. This bastard's body is insane. Rudd recalled Balak's condition. Despite taking quite a few hits from me, there isn't even a scratch. The soul of a warrior who fights with physical strength lies in their muscles. The Steros clan was a family of martial artists from the north, and every member of this clan was a muscle-obsessed freak. Their muscles honed over generations had fused with mana to create a thick armor tougher than steel. Would it be wrong to say his body has become both the strongest shield and the sharpest spear, he thought? Normal attacks won't work in that case. With that thought, Rudd shot towards Balak like an arrow. Balak thought in bewilderment as he dodged Rudd's attack. So fast. His attacks weren't just faster than before. Even his attack patterns had become harder to read. Sly as a snake, they're getting harder and harder to follow. Balak glanced at Rudd, who had his head bowed in thought. By now Balak had regained his composure. He swung a powerful fist towards Rudd. However, Balak told himself there's no way he can pierce the armor of the Steros clan. He was caught off guard by Rudd's counter. Rudd's punch was faster. The impact made Balak spit out a mouthful of saliva. He couldn't believe his eyes. It should have been like this. Across from him, Rudd continued his assault, calling out a warning. Try to dodge this one. Hearing this, Balak gritted his teeth and stared intently at Rudd. Instead of short, decisive blows, softer strikes with a strong pushing force will be more effective. I'll attack the gaps in his armor and destroy it from the inside. With that thought, Balak spun. If I don't dodge, I'll be hit. Rudd attacked again. I know this technique. He swung his fist straight at Balak, who immediately recognized the punch. That's the Steros clan's tidal fist martial art, a style that mimics the vastness of the ocean and the immovability of a mountain. I knew Rudd's fighting style resembled the Steros clan's. Balak's face contorted into a deep frown. But to think he'd mastered a technique that could counter my own. How is that possible when he's not even a member of the clan? No, that doesn't matter, now. Currently, Rudd was overflowing with confidence in his attacks. Balak's eyes suddenly lit up. A smile of excitement spread across his face. I just want to win against this guy. Rudd smirked. Guard up, I'm coming again. He rushed forward, throwing a punch that Balak managed to block with his hand. Focus, Balak told himself. I can't afford to miss a single blow. He retreated continuously, dodging Rudd's onslaught. I can keep up with this speed. Find an opening when he attacks. There. Grab him, recognizing his chance. Balak's eyes shot open. He seized the opportunity and threw a powerful punch towards Rudd. Their fists met with a soft thud. I knew it, Rudd said with a confident smirk. I thought you'd do that. The two exchanged a flurry of powerful blows. Balak watched every single one of his movements intently. Rudd's strength doesn't lie in his ability to deal continuous damage. Instead, it's his freakishly sharp ability to read the flow of battle as well as his mastery of martial arts. However, it looks like he's starting to get tired. It seems I have the advantage in terms of stamina. Rudd's face was now beaded with sweat. If that's the case. Without a second thought, Balak launched himself towards Rudd. He let out a great shout, pouring all his strength into this final move. I'll end him with this one blow. To Balak's surprise, Rudd didn't try to dodge. He's not dodging. This has been fun, Balak, Rudd said with a smug smile. His words made Balak freeze. Chap 9. Rudd slowly drew the sword at his side. You're truly strong, Balak. With that, he swung the blade towards him. Balak threw out his fist. He stared in astonishment at the sword before his eyes. A single slash cut across his body. Balak fell backward in fear. He looked at Rudd and opened his mouth speechless. Rudd bent over, panting heavily, sweat streaming down his face. He smiled victoriously. It's just that I'm stronger. Down in the arena, the atmosphere fell silent. Everyone's eyes were wide with disbelief. A second later, they erupted into excited cheers. The entire Academy Hall was filled with the sound of enthusiastic applause. Impossible, Claire shouted from the second floor. Arthur couldn't hide his surprise either. His jaw hung open, unable to believe what he was seeing. Was that really a match between students? Neither of them even used mana, yet their individual strength is on par with modern-day dragon slayers. And more importantly, Claire's eyes were also wide with amazement. He wasn't even using his full strength in that fight. Even so, his movements, his posture, his precision, they were all perfect. Good heavens, that child has already reached the level of a high-ranking swordsman. And what's more surprising, that perfect sword swing he executed at the end, Daniel said, crossing his arms proudly. I know it sounds absurd, but somehow Rudd's swordsmanship is very similar to my master's, Leon of the Heavenly Sword School. He thought of Leon and chuckled softly. No matter how much of a genius someone might be, I never thought anyone could surpass that monstrous talent. But that kid isn't a genius. He's a monster. A boy whose talent was already perfect before he even started learning. Arthur focused his gaze down below. Daniel smiled with delight. If I could teach a student like that, Damien remained silent. Claire wore a look of deep satisfaction. At the Annette Academy cafeteria, a loud thud echoed suddenly. Hanneth slammed her hand on the table. Why are we in the cafeteria? Can't we just eat out for today at least? She sighed in frustration. Balak paid her no mind, burying his face in his food. Outside, food lacks protein, Hanneth. Rudd, sitting next to him and chewing with his mouth full, added, I miss home-cooked meals. Hanneth clicked her tongue in exasperation at the two of them. You boring idiots! Rudd continued eating with his fork. The food here is good. Why should we spend money eating out when the food here is free? Is money just paper to you? Oh, Hanneth froze, then stammered. But money is paper. Rudd shoved more food into his mouth, feeling helpless. Right, this girl comes from a ridiculously wealthy family. He glanced over at Balak. Come to think of it, this guy is from a rich family too, isn't he? So why is he eating like a gorilla? Balak was oblivious to his surroundings, eating like a man starved. The more Rudd thought about it, the angrier he got. He began shoveling food into his mouth frantically. Damn it. So I'm the only poor one here, so poor I have to risk my life to earn money. Hanneth spoke up haughtily from her seat. That's why I'm saying your big sister here can treat you to a meal out sometimes. I'm sure Balak can take care of himself. The only one we need to worry about is you. Her words made Rudd explode. He slammed the table and pointed his fork at her. I don't need that kind of pity from a filthy bourgeois like you. Confused by his overreaction, she asked, What's with your attitude? Did you get infected by the gorilla next to you? Suddenly a shout came from a distance. Found him! The student from before. Rudd and Hanneth turned to look confused. Only Balak continued to eat diligently. Roderick pointed at him. Look, Aben, he said to the man beside him. That's the student you were talking about. The two slowly approached their table. Murmurs broke out around them. It's the guild masters. Oh really, it's Fallen Tail and Moonshadow. Roderick introduced himself cheerfully. Hello, juniors. That was an impressive match. I'm Roderick Rydell, the guild master of Fallen Tail. I'm Rudd, he said, coolly looking up. Roderick of the Heavenly Bow and Aben of Moonshadow. I didn't know them in my past life. By the time I started working as a dragon slayer, they had already died in the battle against the 7 dragons. Roderick smiled and gestured to Aben behind him. This guy is Aben White. As you can see, he's a bit shy. I'm not shy, Aben retorted coldly. Just kidding, Roderick laughed. I'm Hanneth, she said quickly, standing up to greet them. I'm Balak, he said flatly. Nice to meet you. Right, you two were great as well. Roderick laughed heartily. Hanneth, infuriated, stood up and grabbed Balak's hair, shouting, So rude. Hey, are you crazy? She then turned curiously to the two men. Is it okay if I ask what you two are doing in the student cafeteria? Roderick maintained his friendly demeanor. We're alumni of this academy. We suddenly got nostalgic for the food here, so we stopped by. At this, Hanneth's eyes lit up. Then does that mean Miss Liana might be here too? Liana went back as soon as the swordsmanship class ended, Roderick replied. She said there was no need to stay any longer. Oh, Hanneth said, slumping onto the table in disappointment. Don't be so down. Roderick patted his own neck, trying to comfort her. She'll visit Agridium again soon. By the way, He paused, then moved closer to Rudd with a broad grin. Rudd Abin praised you a lot. He said you're exactly the kind of person he needs in his guild. Abin, unable to stand Roderick's rambling any longer, put a hand on his shoulder to stop him. Don't waste any more time, Roderick, he asked Rudd coldly. You're Rudd, correct? Do you know who I am? Rudd looked at him and answered slowly. You're the fourth-ranked dragon slayer on the individual list and the guild master of the second-ranked guild Moonshadow. Abin sighed and emphasized, so you know me well. But remember, we're ranked second because of information processing, not because we're weaker than the #1 guild. Roderick grinned widely in front of him. His attitude slightly flustered Rudd. Okay, Abin continued. Let's get straight to the point. I watched your match. It was quite impressive. Since I can't avoid this, I might as well play the part of a genius, Rudd thought. He stammered, Well, I am good. Hanneth, standing beside him, gaped in astonishment. I like your confidence, Abin said seriously. That's why I want to make you an offer. Would you like to join Moonshadow after you graduate? Hanneth shot up from her seat surprised. A good offer, Rudd thought. But he asked curiously, Isn't this kind of recruitment forbidden? Why go to such lengths? If the target is a talented individual, people don't usually follow those rules, Abin explained. He made his case to Rudd. You are a genius with immense potential. Someone like you needs a grand stage to perform on. I assure you Moonshadow will provide you with the perfect stage. After thinking it over, Rudd narrowed his eyes and flatly refused his offer. Sorry, but I haven't chosen a guild yet. Having a big guild like Moonshadow backing me is a sweet deal, Rudd calculated in his head. However, it's not a good idea to join a guild where I can't act freely. He made a suggestion. Instead, I'd like to make a deal. Roderick, who had been smiling the whole time, glanced at Abin, who crossed his arms with a surprised frown. What? Can you find someone for me? Rudd stated his request. It's my older brother, a survivor of the disaster from 10 years ago. A survivor from the disaster 10 years ago, Abin replied. That's quite difficult. What do I get if I help you? Roderick burst out laughing. A good relationship with me, Rudd said with a teasing smile. Abin thought. A good relationship with someone with such a bright future isn't a bad idea. After careful consideration, he looked at Rudd and immediately agreed. All right. I hope our good relationship will grow even further. I hope so too, Rudd replied with a smile. Having gotten Rudd's agreement, Abin and Roderick turned and left. Hanneth sighed as she watched their backs. That was like being hit by a whirlwind. Are all high rankers like that? Not necessarily, someone next to her denied. She cheerfully picked up a letter and pointed at it. Anyway, turning down an invitation from a big guild, if you're that confident, it seems you must have received a pretty good letter yourself. What letter? Rudd asked, looking blank. Come on, Hanneth reminded him. I'm talking about the letters the professors handed out after class. Oh, right, Rudd said, suddenly remembering. That sudden offer made me completely forget about it. He reached for the letter, the evaluation letter for the first swordsmanship class. Looking at the pile of letters on the table, he thought, the evaluation for the first sparring session. In my past life, my results weren't that great, but he picked up his letter and opened it. I just realized I haven't looked at this yet. Hanith cleared her throat. No need to look, she said confidently. I'm sure it's all good things. Things that will make your family proud. Rudd looked at Hanneth confused. Does she not like me talking about my brother? Right, she has a sister too, who I think is in a coma. Rudd, what's your brother like? Balak turned and asked curiously. Kind to a fault, Rudd said. Yeah, my brother was a real fool. Even though he was an undefeated dragon slayer, he struggled because of his incompetent little brother. He struggled until the very end. He's also incredibly strong, Rudd said with a voice full of pride. Someone like me can't even compare to him. If he's that strong, I'm sure he's still alive. Don't worry too much. Balak comforted him. Yeah, probably. Rudd smiled helplessly. Hanneth, sitting opposite them, fidgeted. She forced a smile and broke the somber mood. But why don't we open our letters? And so the three of them tore open their letters to read. I'll go first, Hanneth announced eagerly. Good combat sense. Ferocious strategy that pierces through the opponent and uses appropriate skills. Has the potential to become an excellent battle mage. Just as I expected. Next was Balak. My turn. High-level martial arts, powerful physique, perfect body, fierce strength and good reflexes, beautiful muscles. Rudd glanced at him, puzzled. What was that last one? Balak smiled smugly. The professors really pay attention to detail. Professor Claire is amazing. She really knows how to describe things. Hanith clenched the letter in her hand, her eyes turning menacing. What kind of nonsense is that? My muscles are so beautiful the professor had to acknowledge it. Balak replied nonchalantly. Finally, it was Rudd's turn. He opened his letter. Rudd stared at it, utterly speechless. Seeing this, Hanith urged him on. What are you waiting for? Unable to wait any longer, she snatched the letter from his hand. Give it to me. Let me see. Hanith's eyes went wide with surprise as she stared at the letter. What is this? The contents of the letter were revealed before her eyes. After leaving the dining hall, Rudd slowly walked to a professor's office. He raised his hand and knocked. A voice came from inside. Come in. Rudd quickly entered. Excuse me. In front of Rudd were 4 professors staring at him. Arthur, with a serious expression, clasped his hands and spoke first. You finally arrived. A second later, he changed his attitude. Arthur smiled brightly and asked caringly, Come have a seat. Are you comfortable at the academy? Rudd was a bit flustered. He answered cautiously, Ah, yes. Claire at the side also smiled and asked Rudd, Rudd, would you like some coffee? Do you want something to eat? Before she could finish her sentence, Daniel interrupted. He looked at Rudd affectionately. Rudd, it's still cold outside. You should wear a warmer coat. He was very confused by the current situation. In contrast to the friendly attitude of the other 3, Damien kept his arms crossed, with a cold expression, saying nothing. The atmosphere fell silent. After a moment, Rudd also hesitated before speaking. Professors? Did you call me here to choose an advisor? He wanted to confirm one more time. Arthur calmly replied, That's right. I'm sure you already know the meaning of the symbol in the letter. After the sparring session, new students are assigned to a suitable professor. There are cases where students are contacted directly by a professor, and the signature is the symbol for that. Damien finally decided to speak, contacted by all the professors. That's rare. Claire smiled happily and explained, Rudd, this means you have great potential. All the professors respect the student's opinion, so don't you worry. We're all experts. The White Flash Swordsman Daniel, Wild Dog Claire Mason, the Predator Damian Gray, Sergeant Thunder Arthur. Rudd thought to himself, they are all great teachers, but Professor Daniel? He looked towards Daniel and recalled his past life. In my previous life, he chose me and taught me swordsmanship. After thinking, Rudd answered without hesitation, I would very much like to learn swordsmanship from you, sir. Daniel, having been chosen, beamed, a very wise decision, Rudd. Arthur and Claire, not being chosen, could only sigh helplessly. Rudd continued, but I have one condition. He frankly stated his condition, you must accept me as your direct disciple. Hearing this, Daniel's eyes widened in astonishment as he looked at him. The others were also so surprised their jaws dropped. Daniel hesitated and asked, Rudd, do you understand what a direct disciple is? Rudd answered seriously, From what I know, the heavenly sword art still doesn't have a successor, right? The heavenly sword art. An ancient sword and mana technique used to kill dragons is passed down to only one person per generation. In my past life, Professor Daniel was the disciple of a legendary swordsman and my older brother's master. Which means my brother was the next successor. Daniel didn't expect Rudd to answer like that. That's right, but how did you... He furrowed his brow, thinking, of course I want him to be the next successor. But I was planning to offer it to him later. I never expected him to be the one to bring it up first. Daniel asked him curiously, Can you tell me the reason you want that position? Rudd answered bluntly, I want power. Because when I was weak, the dragons killed my friends and family. If I had been stronger, I could have saved them. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. From now on, I don't want to see the people I love die right in front of my eyes again. Daniel's eyes widened when he heard Rudd's answer. Daniel asked himself, if I had been stronger, would they still be alive? The boy's words made him remember his own childhood. A terrified crying, Daniel ran from the sea of fire behind him. His sister's panicked voice echoed in his ears. Get up, Daniel. His sister pulled him along, running from the smoky, burning forest. Suddenly, Daniel tripped. He fell to the ground with a thud, along with his sister's tragic scream, No, Daniel! She lunged forward to embrace Daniel tightly. She wanted to use her own body to protect him from the monster. Fresh blood splattered as Daniel's horrified scream echoed through the forest. Sister, Daniel thought to himself, no matter how much pain a person has endured, if their reason for wanting to be stronger is purely for revenge, then they are not worthy of becoming the next successor of the heavenly sword art. But if it's to protect someone important to them... Sunlight from outside shone into the room. The atmosphere was now frighteningly silent. After a moment of thought, Daniel accepted Rudd's offer. All right. Seeing this, Arthur was startled with surprise. Daniel declared, Rudd, from now on you are my direct disciple. But, he asked Rudd curiously, what if all the professors teach and supervise you together, Rudd? The professor's words made Rudd very panicked. He frowned and yelled, What? Daniel didn't answer his question, but turned to the other teachers and said, Rudd is very talented. It would be a great waste to have him only learn swordsmanship. To let his potential flourish, we must try everything right. Rudd disagreed. He slammed the table and stood up. No, it's hard enough to learn from one professor. How can you learn from 4 professors at the same time? It's not fair to the other students. Arthur touched his chin. He felt that Daniel's words were reasonable. No, this idea is also good. To destroy all dragons, we need a good dragon slayer. It's okay to be a little unfair to create such a person, Rudd shouted in despair. But he couldn't understand what Daniel was thinking. How could a professor who was known to be strict and conservative allow such a risk? Arthur folded his arms in front of his chest and sighed. There will be complaints, but what can they do but blame their own incompetence? Claire raised her hand and shouted in agreement. I agree. I completely agree. Daniel hesitated. If Arthur agrees, Daniel approached Rudd and placed his hand on his shoulder. Rudd, this is just my suggestion. The professor looked at Rudd gently. No matter what you choose, I will respect your decision, Rudd thought to himself. Can I become the successor of the heavenly god while being taught by professors? What if other people's opportunities disappear because of me? This could have a big impact on the future. A knight can fight a dragon. A knight can prevent disasters from happening. After thinking it over, Rudd said, Please take care of me. The professors all smiled at him. Rudd set a goal for himself. I have to ensure everyone's future. To do that, I have to overcome my limits and become stronger at all costs. Having come this far, I will become the knight this world needs.